Of my Unity RPG tutorial. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to create some very simple combat between characters. You can create an enemy character that will follow you around when you come within range of it, and when it gets within melee range of you it will start attacking you. We're also going to make player controls that will allow you to block, therefore stopping attacks, and attack the character back. This tutorial picks up where the last one left off. I've added a couple new animations to the character here. Made a new animation called Get Hit, which we'll use for when the player gets attacked by an enemy. Also Player Attack, which is just a simple punching animation. And Player Defend, which is kind of a boxer kind of pose. I've also added an enemy here. I'll drag it into the scene. So I was a little pressed for time, so I just recolored our character. He has the same animations. When we drag this new character in, that'll be our enemy. Make sure they're named enemy and tagged enemy. If you don't have an enemy tag already, you can just go into the Add Tag menu and then create a new tag called enemy. Be sure to actually apply it afterwards. There are several components we don't have here that we need. So first, we need a capsule collider for our character, placed to actually match the shape of the character. We also need a rigid body. Lots of mass so we don't get the character being pushed around when the player walks into them. Extrapolated interpolation so that the character will not jitter when it walks against a wall. And the constraints of the rotation freezed on X and Z, just so we don't get the character falling over. We don't need to rotate in these axes, so we'll lock them. I'm just going to attach this enemy script onto the enemy and open it up. I'm not going to build it with you this time. I'm just going to walk you through what I have here. I've set 3 public variables up for melee range, speed, and aggro radius. Melee range meaning the distance the enemy has to be from the player in order to start attacking. Speed for the speed at which they travel, very similar to the player speed. And aggro radius, meaning the distance away you have to be from the enemy for them to see you and start pursuing you. I also have a distance to player float, which is going to record how far away the player is, which is being used with aggro radius and melee range. We have a state, which is actually going to keep track of what the enemy is doing, and a link to the player, which will just allow us to interact with the player a little bit more. And if you noticed on void start, we start by actually assigning player to GameObject.find player. In the update loop, the first thing we do is we check distance, which runs over to this set of instructions over here. Vector3.distance compares the transform position, so transform being this game object, the enemy, to the player transform position, and just stores the number of that value in distance to player. And then we use all these if statements here to kind of compare and figure out what to do based on the distance. So if the distance to the player is greater than the aggro radius, then it just resets to idling. If the distance to the player is less than the aggro radius, but it's further than the melee range, then that's follow mode. And if the distance to the player is less than or equal to melee range, and attack isn't already playing, then it starts attacking. A function here that's called attack. This is actually just playing the attack animation. This line here is modifying the attack clip's speed to be randomized. Makes combat a lot more interesting. And then if the player is still in range of the hit when the hit happens, it does a send message, which will go over to our player script and call the hit function. And then finally we have a function for the enemy itself to get hit. So when the enemy gets hit, it plays the get hit animation at a random time. This random time, by slowing it down, will allow it to vary the recovery time once the enemy gets hit. For the new player script we have, it looks very much like the old player script, but we've got a couple new lines of code for our additional abilities. I've changed the idle part of the code to input.anyKey equals false, meaning if no key is pressed, and then nested inside that there's another if statement for checking which animations are playing. So if it's not already playing idle, if you're not attacking, and if you're not getting hit, then go ahead and play idle. Get mouse button down 1 is right click, that's going to be our attack. Get mouse button down 2 is our middle click, that's going to be our defend. Our attack function here is going to use a raycast to physics raycast from the player position. This new vector 3 bumps the origin of the ray up a little bit so that we're not raycasting in the ground and bumping into ground objects. Transform.forward is the direction. Our out is attack hit, so that's where we're storing the information of what the raycast actually hit. And attack range is the distance at which we're checking. We don't want a really long distance because this is a punch for this character. It's not a laser beam. And then we just check to see if the thing that we collided with is actually the enemy. And if it is, we use send message again to send hit to the enemy, just like the enemy sends to us when he hits us. And we have our own hit function here as well. Same deal. So when that plays, we can walk around, comes, punches us, we get hit. We can press middle click to do defend, deflect all incoming attacks, and right click to throw punches.